you see it's attention economy. But as I said in the beginning, before the Kahneman and Siboni and Sunstein panel, DLD is always very flexible and spontaneous. And sometimes you have to change things. So Jochen called me up an hour ago that yes, they will talk about attention economy, but more preferable, they will talk about health topics. Jochen, my good old friend, why is it so? And what's the coming out? Please go ahead. Where's Esther?
Where's Esther?
Esther,
hey, Esther.
You. Esther, you are such an inspiration for me. I owe you so much.
Vielen Dank. Bis später.
Danke, Steffi. So please meet, so I'm sure you are aware of the existence of Esther Dyson. Please meet Esther Dyson. You have to know one thing, she's almost always right about the future. She can see the future of technology like hardly anyone else. And she's a legendary angel investor and venture capitalist. Her investments include Facebook, LinkedIn, Square, Meetup, Evernote, Flickr, whatever. And she developed, and that's why I asked Esther so that we have first of all talk a little bit about health. She developed a focus on health with more than, I think, 40 investments or so. And she's also an investor in 23andMe, for example. And she's also a philanthropist and founded a project called Wellville, you may have heard about, to improve the quality of life and health of 5 communities in the US. So let's start with health and we end with maybe influences. Let's see where we are heading. And first of all, most importantly, we have to show our Oura rings. So I'm sure that at least half of the audience is wearing one and the other half has no clue what this device is about. And as always, Esther was really early, and it's really interesting that she already, I think, 2016 wore the first version of this Oura ring, which was like this. And it broke down yesterday, is that correct?
No,
now you're wearing a spare. So
I got it in time to measure my vaccine reaction, which was very interesting.
Why did you start wearing Oura rings so early?
Curiosity. Curiosity.
And how did it change your life?
So it gave me data, and it gave me, in a way, it gave me permission to leave dinner before dessert and go to sleep. It's when you focus on something, when you pay attention to it, that word attention, it changes how you focus on other things. Suddenly dessert is not as interesting as, oh, I'm going to sleep well tonight, or, all these other things. And that's why addiction, which is really kind of a disease of attention, is so damaging, because it takes your attention away from the people you used to love, or the healthy body you want, or the future you're trying to build. And that's kind of what we're trying to help Wellville do. It's not a nice white lady with a program for these 5 communities. It's more helping them build their own futures and thinking long term.
We come to Wellville in 30 seconds. I just wanted to ask you about the ring thing. And how did so this device is tracking, so I'm not an investor, you're not an investor, so we can talk freely about this. It's tracking 3 or 4 signals basically, and has really intelligent algorithm, obviously telling you how you slept, how your activity is, how your readiness is today, and stuff like that. And I was wondering, how did your patterns change with the beginning of the pandemic?
One amazing thing. Suddenly, I wasn't flying overnight to München or to Moscow or to California. And so I now have incredibly regular sleep. And I still manage to swim every day. So I would imagine I'm one of the lucky 10% that got much healthier. And I'm still working hard. So I'm also happier.
So the pandemic is good for the health of some people, at least, who traveled a lot, who had a stressful life.
A very small number of people. It should be noted. it, but yes, and
I remember you showing on stage. So every time you went on stage, you had another tracking device with you, like this one. I have this one. So do you think?
There we go.
And that's the glucose monitor. Wow.
Yeah, from levels.
So if we think on a societal level, do you think so? We have all these devices out there. Many people wear Apple Watches or have their health trackers. Isn't that an interesting way to change the behavior of whole societies?
Well, yes and no. And this is one of the issues in Wellville. I have enough money to buy healthy food. I have a job that allows me to work remotely. I have access to a swimming pool. I have a place that's quiet enough so I can sleep well. But there are, half the country can get only bad food. Their kids are going to bad schools. It's, the behavior change is partly about the individuals, but go back to Danny Kahneman. It's also about the signals individuals are getting. What are your friends doing? How, if I have to make breakfast for 3 children, get in the car, go to 2 jobs, I don't have time to make a healthy breakfast. I don't have time to go for a nice swim. I'm worrying about too many things. So it's part of it. And I would love to give every 2nd grade child in the country a continuous glucose monitor, just so they know how it works. Not because someone's telling them this is what you should do, but, when I have the cereal for breakfast, my blood sugar goes up. And then I have trouble sitting while the teacher is talking about science, which has no meaning for me, versus, look, this guy ate the scrambled eggs and his blood sugar is steady. And just seeing how the world works and getting a feeling that you can manipulate it is so important, versus they keep telling me I need to eat healthy food, but I don't got the money to buy this healthy food. And, when my wife cooks, I can't tell her I don't want her French fries. So there's so much social context around behavior.
But now you have to explain, please, in 4 or 5 sentences, what Wellville is all about. Okay. So it's your philanthropist project.
Yeah, it's a 10-year project. It's not an attempt to build a grand foundation that will scale and go into thousands of communities. We want to scale by having other people copy us. So we want to go viral without owning it. We're working in 5 communities. They don't pay us. We don't pay them. We put out a call for applications, so they apply. Again, we didn't come and tell them what to do. And we act basically as coaches. So we don't give them fish. We don't teach them how to fish. We're helping them to build their own fishing schools, their own healthy institutions. We're trying to get them to cooperate instead of competing for short-term grants. This year you do science education for high school seniors. Next year there's another competition and you do football for high school juniors. No, we want to build institutions that think long-term, that invest for the long term, instead of simply doing a program and then forgetting about it. And it's focused on mental health, physical health, especially on children, because if the children grow up healthy, again, with the sense of agency, yes, I know what blood sugar is and I know how to control it, they tend to become healthy adults. But if they grow up feeling, oh my God, is daddy going to be drunk when he comes home? Will I have enough food? My brother is hitting me. They become short-term thinkers themselves. And we're trying to change the environment. We're not trying to sign up everybody to participate in our program.
So health is basically about the health of little kids is mainly influenced by their parents, by their teachers, not about, you have to eat this or that or stuff like that. So you're going much deeper into the community than people running around and telling you what to eat and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, but
So
we're helping the community to do it.
Mhm.
And so when we leave, they own what they built.
I think you're something like 60 or 70% into the project now. So how's it going? Simple question.
Going slowly, because this kind of change is slow, but we're seeing again that the groups of leaders are beginning to collaborate more. It's very strange, but I introduce people to one another who live in the same community sometimes. They're
For
focused.
example?
Just the names are meaningless, and I don't want to take too much credit, but just, hey, you should talk to this guy at the healthcare system because they need to refer patients to your diabetes prevention program, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And there's more collaboration. There's, we're not seeing a dramatic transformation. You won't walk into any of these communities and people will, we don't want them to talk about Wellville. We want them to talk about their own public health department. But what we're building is this foundation. We're just like the companies you heard about. We're at the beginning of the hockey stick, but the hockey stick is not exponential. The hockey stick is, let's get to a healthy norm,
right,
where children reach their potential. We're not trying to turn people into super people. We're trying to turn people into people who are what they were meant to be. They're healthy. They work hard. They're not perfect. They enjoy ice cream on Sundays, but they don't get addicted to ice cream.
I was wondering, how did the pandemic change these 5 communities you are working with?
As everywhere in the country, for the rich people, it was a little bump, and they're getting upset because they can't see their friends, and certainly there are mental health issues even among rich people. But for the poor people and the people who work in stores and clinics, for some people, it's been a catastrophe. Their relatives have died. They have died. Their children are not getting the education they deserve. In other ways, some of the positive things are now to go to a city council meeting, you can just get on Zoom and listen. The real question is, can you get on Zoom and talk? And that's still a challenge. But everybody's becoming more familiar how to use digital technology. And even though everybody wants to get off Zoom, that capacity will now exist. People are coming together to set up vaccination sites. So there's more, even as more people are suffering, there's also more community spirit, and there's much more visibility to the rich and mostly white people about the struggles of the poor people of whatever color in the community. They have a little more understanding for their lives and their problems.
So I'm not sure if that's an appropriate question, but are there any KPIs you're looking at? So what would be a success for Wellville?
So reductions in suicides, reductions in diabetes, both how many people have it and the transitions to diabetes, higher, more people graduating from school, children in 3rd grade, for example, reductions in obesity rates, reductions in mortality when, maternal mortality and infant mortality. But then there are the other, when you go into town, does the real estate agent say people are moving in because families know this is a good place to live? To me, that's really, people know that stuff somehow. And that to me is really the most important one. Is this a place people want to live in?
If you think about, so thinking about large scale changes in societies when it comes to health. So another institution that comes to mind is the company. So big
Yeah.
organizations can change the health of their workforce. And I'm aware of some, so like this Haven project, which didn't succeed. So in the US, I'm not sure if the German audience knows this, but there have been efforts from companies like Amazon and Berkshire Hathaway and JP Morgan, whatever, and they just didn't succeed. So why is it so hard, even for an employer, to change these patterns we live in?
First of all, what Haven was trying to do ultimately was to make the healthcare costs go down, which is very different from making people healthy. And that was a problem. I mean,
that was the wrong approach in the first place.
There's a lot of meditation apps and things for mental health. And most of them have really very little data to prove that they work. But to me, the most interesting study would be to look at the mental health of the people whose bosses used the meditation app. In other words, make the workplace a better place to work by making the bosses be kinder and more constructive, because the real way to improve the health of your employees is not by reducing your healthcare costs, but by improving the food in the cafeteria, which Google, for one, was doing until the pandemic, and improving the work environment so that employees feel valued and they feel proud of the company they work for. And that will reduce your healthcare costs over time. It won't necessarily reduce them in 1 year. But that's what, unfortunately, Haven was not doing.
If I think about other large-scale operations trying to change maybe the health of whole societies, 23andMe comes to mind. And you've been at the board, a director there. And I realized, so people realize that the subscriptions to 23andMe went down. So people order less and less of these genetic tests. Why is that so?
So you're going to hear Anne Wojcicki tomorrow, and she will give a much better answer than I do. People are, I don't know the exact reason. I'm sure it has something to do with marketing, something to do with people's attention. But the company, it serves its customers very well. I was just online listening to watching a next door chat about 23andMe. And, people are like with Ura, you find out more about yourself. And again, you pay attention. Maybe I should eat better because I have a genetic predisposition to getting diabetes. Not I am diabetic, but just, I'm a human being. And it's one more thing to pay attention to. They are now working with a bunch of pharma companies with very careful attention to not using the data of people who have not consented. And they don't give the name. I mean, it's personally unidentified, to work on some really interesting pharma projects. And, financially, they are about to go public through a SPAC with Richard Branson, which again, Anne will tell you more about. So there has been a slowdown. Ancestry basically got out of the market. But I think, shall we move on to attention for the last 3 minutes or something?
So let's leave 23andMe behind and talk about the more recent things. So we promised to talk about the new kind of attention economy, and one interesting object to study that is obviously Clubhouse. And I see you on Clubhouse a lot. You've been there since last summer. In Germany, it exploded only some weeks ago, I would say 1 or 2 months ago. And why first of all, why are we so excited about a thing like Clubhouse?
So first of all, just fact check, I've actually started the last month or two. I don't remember exactly.
But you're registered since summer.
Whatever. First of all, it's much better than this, where we keep going in and out and we talk over each other because the sound and the video don't work quite right. So it's more intimate. It's also interesting. It creates this sort of hierarchy, just like at TED, where you have, the patron sitting in the front row, and then you have another row, and which is, of course, both alluring and I think somewhat troubling. It's much more intimate than Zoom. You can see who's speaking much more easily. The audience, the first few tiers of the audience are visible. It's a genuine conversation as opposed to a mediated whatever. Its value and its problems are both going to be due to the users. I think they know this, but they need to pay a lot more attention to training moderators to call it quality control or moderation or setting rules, while at the same time giving people the freedom to communicate. I think it has a danger of becoming addictive.
I'm sorry. I could listen to you, but I have an idea. Tonight, after the conference, the official conference is we do a clubhouse, and you both have to be in. We have to listen more about what you're doing.
Meta Clubhouse on Clubhouse.
You have to be the DLD room on Clubhouse, 9 o'clock in European time. Esther would be great speaking to you. And Jochen, I forgot to mention that you're now the famous editor of ZEIT Online. Thank you for giving us such good information. Esther, you're still a role model. What you do with Wellville is such a wonderful example of engagement and not only talking, but doing. Thank you for this.